Hey there. Today I'd like to talk a bit about yoga and what I believe the true essence of yoga is. Many people watching this video will know that the term yoga means union and that it's associated in the modern day with a variety of different Indian spiritual disciplines, which would be things like different physical postures or asana, forms of breath control or pranayama, and maybe most importantly samyama, meditation. This, however, isn't the original meaning of yoga. Yoga originally meant the ability to yoke. And by yoke, I really do mean tie a rein to an animal and be able to guide it, as in a chariot with two horses, how you'd hold the reins. And the term yoga was talking about that ability, and specifically the state of mind needed to guide that chariot. If you read any of the ancient epics of India, you'll see the heroes often, after they've had a spectacular life or achieved great things, they actually ride their chariot into the sun at the end of their life. Not into the sunset like in our westerns, actually they pierce the disk of the sun at the end of their lives. Now, before I start to discuss this exact state of mind and how to achieve it, I'd like to point out that this analogy also exists in a very strong way in the Western tradition. So in ancient Greece, the term metis meant a still, aware state of imperturbability, which was cunning and adaptive, which was in particular related to this charioteer. You can even read in Plato's works about how being a human on a quest, a spiritual quest, is a bit like having a chariot with two horses, one black and one white, and one's pulling up a bit and one's pulling down a bit. So this state of mind was being sought by both traditions. Let's talk about how this is achieved, and let's talk about the challenges involved in its attainment. So both groups of spiritual explorers wanted this mind state. And they wanted this mind state because it's that very state of mind that could take them where they wanted to be. And that would mean to either a higher state of consciousness or to an entirely different realm in some cases. So a charioteer needs to be able to be focused on where they're going and not to be easily distracted. You've got two horses that need to be guided on an ongoing basis. So even if you go through an area that's extremely beautiful and pleasurable, you can't lose focus. You've got to keep guiding those horses. Likewise, there could be some areas which are very horrible to go through. Maybe you're getting tired and there's nowhere to have a break, or maybe it's very bumpy. So you need to be able to ignore pleasure and pain when it's necessary. You also need to be able to know when not to. So you can imagine a very foolish person may overwork their horses or themselves, or they may take the chariot through ways that it's not going to work, and where it could get damaged or they could get lost. So you need to have this aware, centred and imperturbable state of mind. You also need to be genuine, because if you're not genuine, then you will go off course or you'll change your mind. Now, in yogic texts, they talk about why these distractions can occur. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, they talk about vritti, or these are disturbances in your consciousness, and how they need to be smoothed out. To understand these vritti, we just need to look at the normal, everyday consciousness of man. Both the original Indian texts I talk about and these pre-Socratic Greek texts see a man as a very confused and lost individual. And initially that may seem like a rather strange statement to make, but we just need to look at normal everyday life events to see how true this is. So how often have you seen anyone ask directions and then make no effort to remember what the person who's describing them to them says? It's very, very rare you'll see anyone ask more questions. Say, oh, okay, so it's a left turn, then a right. Are there any landmarks I need to look out for? What's the name of the street? And it's not that they don't want to go where they're asking to go, it's that they can't maintain that yoga, that metis, for long enough. They ask and then they're off. How often do you see someone in a job and they're making an effort on one level, but the other level they're sabotaging themselves because they don't really want to do it? You can probably think about your own examples that you see in everyday life where people are trying to do something but they're not doing the obvious things that they know would achieve that. On a higher level, how many people do you meet who have actually worked out what they want to do with their life? So they've actually worked out, I've got this amount of time here, this is what's going to happen. So without yoga, or without this metis, you can be lost. The chariot's not guided. So the reins require responsiveness, but they also require stability. The genuineness I talked about, this is quite tough, because there can often be other motives involved in your personality that aren't 100% on board with what you're trying to do. You've probably got one genuine goal in mind, but just like the charioteer, finds himself thinking, well, maybe I'll take this detour, or maybe the real goal is to go here, not to go to the original destination. These disturbances can get in your way, and that's where yoga, the ability to yoke, and the yoga union start to come into place. Because in order to achieve this state of mind, you need to harmonise and balance yourself, and you need to work with how everything is and not try to fight against how everything is. So for me, one of the big wake-ups to do with this was once I visited a martial art class that was completely genuine. So I was in Dayton, Ohio, and I saw a class where the instructors weren't just showing the martial art and hoping that the students picked it up at whatever their own level was. They were actively trying to find better ways to teach their students, and they were always learning what the person's teaching responses were, what their best way of learning was. to the degree where they'd communicate. They'd say, oh, just to let you know, if you're going to be teaching Martin, he responds very well if you you give him keywords, phrases, mnemonics that help him remember the exact positioning, that kind of thing. And they were adapting to everything. Wow. In that moment when I saw the students were far more on target too. So in most martial arts classes there's a technique, and one person pretends to attack the other person and the other one defends and does the technique, and it's, is it your turn, is it my turn? In this class there's no switching off. It was always both people's turn. If you were attacking, you really were attacking. If you were doing the technique, you were doing it against someone who was really trying to attack. They may be going more gently, but it was always on target, it was always real. Everyone kept that alertness. In other less enlightened environments, people have confused goals that get in the way. So they, perhaps in the world of martial arts, you can imagine someone could become an instructor and they do like martial arts, but they really want to be important. So that wanting to be important could get directly in the way of being a good instructor, because if someone gets better and starts to approach your skill level, that's not good. You want to be important and you also want to be in control, so you have to make sure they don't get better, so then you're trying not to teach. Oh, it's getting tricky. In the spiritual groups, I've seen people who do things, big things for attention. And this can happen both ways. You can have a teacher who will always come up with a nice explanation of anything the person says. So, someone says, I had this dream and it was all very confusing and there was green smoke sort of around me in my bed and I didn't know what was going on. And the instructor, the spiritual teacher, will give them an instant answer. Say, oh, that's to do with your liver meridian and it's a healing thing, or whatever. And there's no way the person hasn't taken any time to contemplate or really try to connect to what the person's saying. And indeed, the very fact that nothing is ever meaningless, nothing is ever just a dream, nothing's, or the instructor doesn't ever not know. So there's confusion. I don't want to be seen as not knowing is getting wherever I want to be a genuine teacher. So as you can see, to just ride the chariot to where you want to go, it takes a high degree of self-development. You need to get rid of the parts of yourself which are working against you, and this can happen through fear, through anger, through any emotion that gets in the way. You've probably all seen someone who's so nervous they're tense and working against themselves. It can be injury, it can be habits that don't work very well anymore, that were brought around in an emergency time, a bit like a spasm in the body. It's a sort of a habit of the mind. It can be inability. It's a physical thing, but it's the same with a mental thing. People can't suddenly get onto a chariot and ride it without any practice or without any conditioning. So that's why we have all these beautiful disciplines in order to help us do this. So the postures allow you to get this state of mind, because you will have to go through all the same lessons to achieve yogic postures. The same with the breathing, but in particular the meditation, which is really practicing this template of excellence. To do this state of mind, everything needs to work. You have to have a good posture, good breathing, a good outlook, a good state of mind, and that's why these disciplines are so healthy. It takes a harmonious, healthy person to be able to achieve these things. Very few people genuinely seek this state of mind modernly. And this is not just because the meaning has been lost to some degree, but because we fall asleep so quickly. So within moments of making that goal, we can be moved to something else. Likewise, because yoga and other traditions have become commercialized, it's hard to teach things which are both fun and achieve this goal. Why? Because we need to learn to ignore the want for enjoyment and to ignore discomfort when it's needed. So a whole practice based around enjoyment may not be the best one to go for. Those who have genuinely connected with this state of mind, knowingly or unknowingly, cannot hide themselves. And here is my advice as to how to tell when someone has it. Look for someone who always manages to see through what they say they're going to do. Your words are an extension of the mind. Speaking to the ancients was thinking out loud, and that's really what it is. So when someone says, I'm going to achieve this, but then doesn't do so, you know that one of those disturbances moved them off track. I mean, unless you can see there's a logical reason. Maybe they didn't know there was going to be some route so dangerous they'd have to take a very significant detour. And then you can see true yoga.